I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight is REM sings, "It's the End of the World as We Know It." Ever since the pandemic, that possibility seems more and more, well, possible. And so my next guest, Stephen Ridley, has penned a vital resource for survival of humanity. It's called The Book of Outcomes. We welcome Stephen to Spotlight. Thank the folks at Sweet Spire Literature Management for helping us put Stephen in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers at home watching on YouTube to please support writers like him by subscribing to our channel. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure is all mine. Loved your book. It's a delightful blend of Eastern and Western philosophies. And what was your inspiration for writing this treatise?
I suppose it's actually gone on for a long time, for several decades. So through my life, I've realized as I was going through my professional life, how broken this world had become and how corrupted it had become. My background is finance. I'm a qualified accountant in the UK, and I have an MBA in technology management. So finance and technology are my corporate background, but I'm also a Reiki master and a crystal healer. So I've got the strange mix of corporate and spiritual, shall we say. So,
Right.
And they don't necessarily go very well together,
Right.
as we know. So I've been studying the system for many years now. And about 12, 13 years ago, I started making the links between finance and our production systems and carbon dioxide emissions directly. And that sort of came about. One of my hobbies is scuba diving, and I was in the Red Sea on a dive boat in 2009, and I read an article in a magazine that was talking about El Nino events and La Nina events. So to viewers, if they're not aware of what those are, it's sort of above average ocean surface temperature, above normal. That's El Nino, and La Nina is below normal. So this is about oceanography, climatology, not about weather. This is long-term trends.
Right.
In this magazine, which was amusing because it had a picture of a very beautiful woman on there in a wetsuit, and she said, "Does my butt look big in this?" to get my attention. Right? That got my attention. But there was a serious article in there, and it said that these events, the El Nino events, happened on average every 7 years. And through my finance training, I tied that with my economics training, and we used to go through 7-year economic cycles. So I thought maybe there's a correlation here. So when I got back to the UK, I looked this up and looked up the gross domestic product, which is how we measure the economy growth in the United States and the UK and all Western countries, and indeed probably in China now as well. So there was a correlation, and the correlation was exactly 9 months out. And I knew that from my corporate work, that's the time lag between sort of production and effect, if you like. So, for example, if we're going to recession, it's already happened 9 months before in terms of cash flows. So I thought, okay, let me compute this and send it off to a professor of climatology, one of the UK universities, and he dismissed it. I was so disappointed and upset. And he was a volcanologist, so that's where his funding was coming from. So we sort of, get the measure of where the interest is. Right. But a year later, 2010, I was just walking along the seafront by the sea, getting my inspiration, and the thought came to me, maybe inspired, who knows, is that one of those things, to go home and look up to get the data. So I went back, and within 20 minutes, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, Mauna Loa on Hawaii, where there's the observatory. So I got the data for 47-year period. So this was up to 2007, because this is 2009. So it's from 1960 to 2007. And would you believe I got exactly the same period data on the top 20 nations globally, their GDP, gross domestic product, in US dollars. I re-baselined it, put it into a spreadsheet, and I would have been happy if there'd been like 80% correlation. It came out at 99.6%, 100%, right? 100% correlation between our production and carbon dioxide. So then I set about trying to find out, what was causing that correlation. And there was lots of things like wastage, our transportation systems and so forth. So therefore, we also had a solution. So it's not just about the use of carbon fuels, it's what we do with them.
Right.
But in terms of the book and the writing, a lot of it was spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we come to the spiritual link as well. And for many years, I was looking at systems and morality, and I came up with trying to understand if we could define what morality was, because it's very subjective. We have different value systems around the world,
Right.
and that didn't sound right to me. So I came up with whether it was something was constructive, then it was moral. But then I thought about how to test that. If you gave money to someone on the street and they spent it on drugs and overdose, then that wasn't benevolent. So it had to be benevolent as well, right? So that defined it for me. And the acid test was immorality destructive or malevolent? And the answer is yes. So we had our definition. So combine that with working together, collaboration, and we have a virtuous circle. People working together constructively for one another will encourage other people to do it. So the way out of this is to work together, because there's a Japanese proverb, none of us are as smart as we all are. It's actually about coming together. Yeah. So it's this combination of things, of climate change, the financial system, what we could do to change it. And that's where I ended up with the third book, the Book of Outcomes, which is the blueprint, how to fix it, including politics and justice. But it started with the value system. And if I could just sort of show. So I self-published this in 2010. Mm-hmm. Only took me 5 weeks to write, after a road trip from London down to Rome through France and Switzerland. So I did something like 3,000 kilometers in 11 days. And that was the basis of the book. And I self-published that. But later that year, I actually thought about publishing. So I got this out. This is the Book of Life. So this is the first book. And this was done a couple of years later. But it's the same book, basically, but that's through a proper publisher. And
I think it's great that you laid out the problems and you gave your thoughts about life and the issues with the world, but then coming up with a blueprint to kind of solve these problems, like you said. I think that's why this book really works well as the final part of a trilogy.
Absolutely. And so the second one, which only took me 5 weeks to write as well, this is about intention, what our thinking is. So if our thinking is correct, our intention is correct, and we act on it correctly, and we do it with that value system of working together constructively and benevolently, we probably find the solutions. But obviously, there are political blueprints in there as well, because it's about leadership and so forth. Yeah. So that's, and as you can see, they're small books, but this one took 3.5 years to write. So this is this was a labor of love, this one.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So anyway, so that's where it came from, and the inspiration. So trying to make a difference in the world.
And I think you are. And I think it's great to remind people not only of Eastern philosophy and Western philosophy, but also to put elements of God in there, because, for, I think, most of the world, whether they have a formalized religion or not, most believe in a creator, and most believe that's why we should do good.
And that's the origin of the word God in the English language, from the German Gut and God. So even if you say I don't believe in God, if you believe in goodness, then you do.
Yeah.
In a form, and that's where morality comes from. And this is where it comes from the heart, So when we feel that it's right, we feel it, we think it. So even if, sociologically, we've got people who can't empathize or have less compassion, they can still reason and actually say we know the difference between right and wrong. So we're in this together, basically, through all of our thinking, our gut feeling, and how emotionally we feel about it as well, and what motivates us to do it.
When you look at the political climate, when you look at the state of ecological climate, when you look at disasters like COVID, do you feel like we're getting to be apocalyptic?
I know apocalypse also means change in ancient Greek as well. So it doesn't have to be doom and gloom. The outcome depends on us. If we work together, we're fine. Yeah. If we go our separate ways and there's separation. Interestingly, the word sin doesn't really exist. It means sine. without God. It's literally sine die, without God.
Right.
So our sin is away from goodness. That's the best way of putting it, even in modern language. So if we separate, as we have been, then how can you find solutions? And I challenge people to sort of name one thing in their life where they didn't benefit from the work or the collaboration of other people.
Yeah.
And anything, whether it's food, clothing, roads, housing, education, even our thought processes. We stand on the shoulders of giants,
Exactly.
and when we develop our thinking incrementally, shall we say, and we can innovate from that, from within.
Has this been a source of good or a source of evil?
This is a very good question. So my MBA majored, I didn't want to do finance again, and I ended up doing it anyway. But this was in technology management with the Open University, which was a new degree in mid-90s. And the academic said, we can't look at the past as a guide to the future. There will be a new paradigm, and it will be created by technology. So technology means the science of know-how, how we learn and grow. So technology doesn't have any values of its own. Electricity can be used to kill someone or make toast.
Right.
So it's the value system behind it. So there's nothing wrong with a mobile phone. There's nothing wrong with the technology. It's the intention of what it's going to be used for. So if it's used collaboratively for the common good, that's different to separation and control, not for the common good. That's the difference.
There seems to be, in this electronic age, so much control. Differences of opinions are not allowed. People are eviscerated by other anonymous people online. There seems to be a lot of cruelty that this is a conduit for. Like you said, I know this intrinsically is an evil, and it's done some good. It's brought me back together with some best friends that I lost touch with over the years, and you find them on Facebook or whatever. But then you also have these people who, say horrible things to other people online too.
It becomes too easy to actually cause damage, doesn't it? Because you can actually disseminate your views far more quickly, for good or ill. And that's the issue. So this comes down to underlying values and the virtues of compassion and being passionate about things, but being compassionate and having integrity. That's a big virtue that we're missing, I think, in the world. Honoring your word. You say you're going to do something, you're going to do it. It's a bit like saying, well, I'm honest most of the time. There's no such thing. You're honest or you're not honest. A bit of honesty or a bit of integrity is a bit of a contradiction.
The shades of gray is where there's a problem.
Absolutely.
It really has to be a black and white world. It has to be, this is right, this is wrong. And if you think it's somewhere in the middle, you're probably not right.
And that's where that value system of collaboration, constructiveness, and benevolence comes in, because it's fairly clear what you do. Don't do if it's not collaborative, because if you're doing it on your own, someone else, you're going to be taking from someone else. So think about the bigger picture, the holistic view, shall we say, and do so constructively. Do so positively. Do teamwork, work together positively, and who for others, because what goes around comes around. We call it karma, or prana in India. So different words for this. You reap what you sow. Everyone knows about this, and it's very true. And this is what's happening. So this apocalyptic period you referred to is our payback. We're reaping what we sowed. We're all complicit in this. We're waking up to this now, and we're waking up to wanting perhaps a different world, I believe. And some are ahead of the game. Some people are more enlightened or awake than others, but other people are beginning to question, and that's the first part of this. It's awareness. A bit like Tai Chi. You become aware. It gets your attention, then you create an intention to change it and act on that. So this philosophy comes from the East and has been there for a long time in Qigong and Tai Chi, and the Tao Te Ching, and it's in all of the faith books as well. The golden rules in the Holy Quran, in the New Testament, in the Torah, the Buddha Kavana from Gautama Siddhartha, the Buddha. So they all say the same thing. So and if they're saying the same thing from different time zones, different parts of the world, millennia apart, how can that be wrong? So what we're really doing is bringing it up to date. And I think we've ignored the messages for too long.
Absolutely. There was another messenger. He lived about 2,000 years ago. Might have been the son of God, might have been a prophet, might have just been a good man. Do you think that we need to get back to more Christian values? Do you think that would be helpful, or is that um, divisive because not everyone's a Christian? What are your thoughts on that?
So Christianity is an interesting one. So if you listen to the words of Yeshua, the man, the person who had what I call the Christ being within him, the Christos. Yeah, the key. It comes from the Greek Cairo, which is the key to the gate symbol, the X and the P. Yeah, and you see that symbol. So it's an ancient symbol, but his message was very simple, wasn't it? It was basically treat others as you wish to be treated, the golden rule, and actually recognize that there is one. We are all one, that we're part of the universe. We're a part of God. We are not God, but we are part of God. God is within us, you know. So what he was saying is, be like me and you will see the Father. And he's basically saying that goodness is within you. And that's the Christian message. If we get that part, then yes, absolutely, I'm a Christian. I'll tell you a quick story about my religion, because I worked for the world's largest consultancy. Yeah. And when I joined, when I was recruited, you have the form, you know, yes, male, Caucasian, heterosexual, in my case, and then religion. And then it said, which one do you want to tick? I ticked all of them. They probably thought I was mad, but for me, it was exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've prayed in cathedrals and churches. I've prayed in mosques. I've prayed in synagogues. I've yet to visit Hindu temple. There's a big one in West London. But yeah, I've been in Buddhist temples, and that's spirituality to me. So the message is the same. So there's messages in the Holy Quran. There's messages in the New Testament. But if I said, was Christianity good? If we get back to the original message, it's perfect. It's not even good, it's perfect. All right. So if you're a good Christian, you'll understand that it's about the golden rule. You know, Jesus was trying to teach us this. We just lost the message, you know. Muhammad was trying to teach you know, the similar. Muhammad couldn't read or write, you know, so he channeled this. He was the best channeler that ever lived, you know, and Yeshua was the best Reiki master that ever lived with his hands healing. So people sort of take, oh, is Reiki, you know, is that sinister? I said, Jesus used to do it. He used to try to get other people to do it. He said, you can do this too if you can actually channel the energy, the godliness within you. And that's what Reiki masters try to do and teach others, because it's about the principle. And yet that came through Mikao Yuzui in Japan, you know, and with the line of Shintoism and Buddhism and so forth. So they're all linked. That's why this East-West link-up has to take place, because there are things to learn from the Tao Te Ching, from Lao Tzu and Confucius. Interestingly, I saw a documentary recently. This is about value systems, and it was a resurgence of Confucianism in China and the value system and valuing your ancestors and rituals and so forth. And an executive came on the program, and he was chief executive of an energy company. And he said, we've taken on these Confucian principles. So we pay pensions not to our employees, but to their parents. Now, that's really enlightened. So you know that you don't have to worry about saving up for your old age, because you know you're going to be looked after. Something in the West we're not sure about. And I think that probably fuels this hoarding of money to make sure I'm okay and I can survive this. And yet there's no guarantee of that with stock markets and all the stuff that happens with pension fund investments and so forth. So it's a broken model in the West where we can relearn, if you like, and share the best of East and West. And this is where we come together. You know, we come together as humanity. So people who are Taoists would understand Buddhism. You know, Buddhists understand Christianity. You know, true Muslims understand that Judaism has the same goals. You know, Hillel the Elder had the same rules. So there are avatars and holy men and prophets throughout the ages where we can go to and just compare what they say. You know, and we can get back to truth and goodness. That's what I would like to achieve in my lifetime.
Absolutely. Well, you're helping to achieve that by writing this wonderful book. It's called The Book of Outcomes. It is written by Stephen Ridley. It is a wonderful exploration of philosophy, spirituality. It is highly recommended. This is a troubled time. It's not just media distortion. These are difficult times right now that we're navigating. We do need to come together, as Stephen says. And whether you're a Muslim, whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Jew, whether you're an atheist, whatever it is, there is common ground among good people. We can find that, we can work together. And thanks to Stephen Ridley, he has put together a blueprint for all of this. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing.
My pleasure. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.